Hello, Dan Richardson here at the Chapel of the North Hills, inviting you to continue to join with us in reading the Bible every day for 40 days, concentrating on Jesus' Holy Week, the last week he was on earth before his resurrection. And as helps us to get ramped up into Easter, into the Easter season, to think about all the things he had to say and do in that last week. Well, he started the week with the triumphal entry, and then he made direct attack on the temple where the people were misusing the temple. Jesus was certainly not against the temple. He was against the way that the temple was being treated. And the privateers were leaving no room for the nations to come and worship. The Gentiles, the court of the Gentiles was being taken over by money changers. And so Jesus drove those out. And we read accounts in other gospels of it, and we read the story in the book of Luke today, and he chases people out. And as he's doing this, he's actually quoting a couple of phrases from the Old Testament. He says, "My house will be a house of prayer for all nations." My house is supposed to be a house of prayer for all nations. And he's quoting the book of Isaiah there. And then he said, "But you have made it a den of thieves." And that's a phrase that's come into our popular culture. We use that phrase quite a lot. It actually comes from the book of Jeremiah from the Old Testament, where Jeremiah stood up in the temple and denounced the way that the people were treating the temple and consequently the rest of the worship of God. And on the way into the city, he stops and they look at the fig tree, and the disciples realize that fig tree that Jesus cursed has already withered up. They couldn't believe that it had happened so fast. And Jesus took the time to teach them a little lesson about that, the lesson of the fig tree. Of course, the fig tree is more than a fig tree. The fig tree represents the nation of Israel at the time. And he teaches them, we read about this in Mark, about the lesson of the fig tree is that we need to learn how to pray. And the fruit that we bear as Christians is all going to come from our life of prayer, the time that we spend one-on-one with God. And he mentions two of the big hindrances to our prayers. One would be faithlessness, and one is forgivelessness. I guess that's a word. Lack of being forgiving, and the lack of having enough faith to trust that God is good for his word, and that when you ask him for something, things are going to happen. Well, these are the lessons of the fig tree, and we see the heart of Jesus for the proper worship of God in all of this. Be blessed.